Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin tonight in the Yukon, where some residents of Marsh Lake say they've lost trust in Yukon Energy. It comes off the heels of Yukon Energy's attempt to re-license the Whitehorse Dam for 20 years. Some residents say mismanagement by the corporation led to major flooding in 2021. Now they want stricter conditions on any prospective deal. Virginie Ann has more.
Doug Phillips says much has changed since Yukon Energy received its license for the Whitehorse Hydro facility in 2000. Extreme water levels, including floodings, are now a recurring reality.
So this gives you an idea of what has happened out here over the past, since 2021, the high water. We built these berms. And we did a survey in the Southern Lakes area of Army Beach and South McClintock, and just over 50% of the people responded to the survey, and I think the number was just over $2 million of improvements that people have made to their property since 2007.
Yukon Energy has no power over what causes flooding. Phillips knows that, but he also believes the utility can lessen the severity of it. In order to do that, Phillips says Yukon Energy needs to have a license that is not stuck in the past.
Climate change is here, and everybody recognizes that. Yukon Energy recognizes that. But Yukon Energy's new license, doesn't reflect that. The new license just says status quo. We're going to do what we did before. We've approached them many times on controlling the water levels more efficiently, and been given commitments that they will, but they don't follow through. And so our trust is gone as well.
Phillips says it hopes the Yukon Water Board will offer a 10-year license instead of 20 to rebuild trust, and that it will force Yukon Energy to closely monitor climate change and to include a high water levels protocol within the license. Phillips and the committee argue that with more data on snow melts and on rain, Yukon Energy could respond faster to high water levels by lowering Schwatka Lake.
Make it law. So they have to do it. And then we don't have to make phone calls or send emails or scream publicly about what's happening or not happening. And we will rest and sleep a little easier when we know that the lake's managed a little better, considering the dramatic changes of climate change.
Yukon Energy says it's not that simple.
We would have to operate Schwatka Lake at the low supply level for months and months, the entire flood season, not just a few days. So if we have less water to generate the electricity that everyone needs at Whitehorse Rapids, we either need to use water at Mayo or use water at Asiac. Well, we still have really low water at Asiac. We don't have any water to use there. So then that means we need to burn more LNG or more diesel. And burning thermal costs, that power costs more, and Yukon ratepayers will end up paying for that.
Mueller says Yukon Energy knows water levels will continue to shift with climate change. When asked what's in the proposed license about that,
we're doing many of the same things that we've been doing for 20 years.
Yukon Energy can operate until July 30th, while the Water Board makes its final decision. Virginie Ann, CBC News, Whitehorse.
The Yellowknives Dene First Nation is reeling from mass layoffs at Northwest Territories' Akati Diamond Mine this week. On Wednesday, owner Burgundy Diamond Mines announced it was ceasing open pit operations at Akati and laying off hundreds of workers. DETA Chief Ernest Betsina says a number of his members have worked at the mine for years. He says the First Nation is going to insist that Burgundy recognize their seniority and compensate them fairly.
I'm very surprised and disappointed to hear that about the layoff announcement from Burgundy Diamonds. Yeah, a number of our members have suddenly found themselves out of a job. I want to reassure that my YKDF members that we will try our best to advocate for each and every one of you. Given the collective agreement in place, we are confident that each worker will be given a fair treatment.
Industry observers are less shocked by the news that Akati is scaling back operations. Diamond industry analyst Paul Zimnisky says the diamond market has been weak for more than 2 years. He says even if prices recover, it's very challenging to maintain all that equipment and rehire hundreds of people. The government of Nunavut has signed a deal to continue to provide charter flights for residents in the territory. The deal is with the company that operates Canadian North, but it'll also include services provided by Calm Air. TJ Deer has those details.
GN-funded planes will continue to be provided for at least the next decade. Nunavummiut will be allowed to book flights for medical, duty, and family services client travel. The deal has an option for it to be renewed for another 5 years. Also part of the deal, a chance to have a seat at the table. The GN is working on potentially purchasing a minority stake in Canadian North. Nunavut Premier PJ Akiagok said the final number is still being discussed, but it would allow Nunavummiut to have a say in how the airline works.
The key area around that is really about protecting and enhancing the service delivery of our lifeline, of the airlines.
The deal comes after the federal government approved the purchase of Canadian North by the Exchange Income Corporation. EIC President Carmel Peter said unlike the previous deal, they'll work with the GN to provide a, quote, holistic and sustainable service.
We take into account what's happening in the various communities, in the aviation environment.
Canadian North did not respond to an interview request. TJ Deer, CBC News, Iqaluit.
We have more for you tonight on the helicopter crash near Betchikon NWT that claimed the life of a pilot earlier this week. On Monday afternoon, RCMP said a helicopter crashed about 1.5 kilometers from Highway 3 near Betchikon. The pilot was part of a tree planting project run by the Cleachon government. A member of the project recalls the team jumping into action, clearing away brush to get to the scene when the call of a helicopter down was heard over the radio. While some team members gave medical aid, others scrambled to clear space for a helipad.
Yeah, there was a helicopter that arrived on scene, and at that point, you know, it was too late. There was a real sense of bearing witness and respect. Just a deep moment of sort of silence and disbelief.
Cressman says counselors were made available to the team that evening. Prayers and drummers offered additional support in the hours that followed. The project had been put on pause after the crash. It did start up again today, but Cressman says some are still taking the time to process the situation. RCMP in Nunavut say they're investigating after finding human remains in Kugluktuk. The remains were found about 10 kilometers outside 4 Mile Bay. Police say they got a report about the remains on Tuesday and were able to transport them to the community. The Nunavut Coroner's Office says it's opened an investigation. The NWT should have begun testing school drinking water for contaminants decades ago. That's according to a lead expert Yellowknife schools consulted with this week. Elevated levels of lead have been discovered in drinking water in 2 city schools. Bruce Lanphier is a health science professor at Simon Fraser University. He says testing of school drinking water should have started 20 years ago. The NWT government had planned to test in 2018, but that was canceled to save money. An official with the government said the testing was expected to cost more than $100,000. The NWT government says it's committed to testing school drinking water annually going forward. For the second time this week, the government of Nunavut is advising people to boil their water before consuming it. This time it's in Pond Inlet. People in the hamlet are being told to boil their water for at least 1 minute for drinking, cooking, making formula for babies, washing fruit, or brushing teeth. It's because of cloudy water, also known as high turbidity. It's the same thing that's happening in Clyde River. People were told to start boiling their water there on Tuesday. The community of Cambridge Bay is taking measures to fight the rise of drugs in the community. The hamlet held a town hall on Monday. It comes after a drug-related assault last week. Nearly 100 people showed up to the meeting, which lasted over 3 hours. The MLA for the region says people don't feel safe.
In terms of what's happening, we need to mend the situation and work towards being whole again and being able to have our community run in harmony.
Community members say the hamlet needs more measures to fight drug trafficking, things like heightening security between Yellowknife and Cambridge Bay, creating a neighborhood watch, and bringing in RCMP drug detection dogs. Another town hall will be held next month that will focus on gathering youth perspectives. Amidst all the buzz about Arctic sovereignty, some Northerners believe there's one voice missing: the young generation of Inuit who call the land home. They want opportunities to empower youth to be at the heart of Arctic policy. Samuel Watt has that story.
This land and these coastlines along Iqaluit is where Manu Konuk feels at home.
Arctic sovereignty means to me protecting our people and our land and having control over it.
Right now, he sees a lot of military interest in the Arctic. He's participated in several global youth forums, but at home, he believes there's a lot missing. Community consultations, for example, and even an Arctic Security Committee for youth.
We're the future of the land. We're going to be the next leaders.
Alasua Hansen doesn't see much military presence in Nunavut despite all the talk, and when there is, she doesn't often see Inuit involved.
A handful of people I know go to Alert, and it's more of the Southerners who are able to travel up there.
She hears a lot of political talk though, but she says Ottawa needs to do more than that, especially with the country's colonial history.
They could, be present in the community rather than holding 5-day-long meetings or, have some chance to get an opportunity to hear from the locals.
When Students on Ice founder Jeff Green hears the words Arctic sovereignty, this is what goes through his mind.
It's being treated very much in a geopolitical sphere right now, where there are certainly a lot of things going on.
Talking about military and infrastructure is fine, he says, but he wonders where's the investment in youth? In his view, that's through more opportunities to connect with other youth globally, and education that roots Inuit to traditional knowledge and the land. That's what Nolan Kamanuk wants to see more of.
I don't think we need more youth leadership programs that teach us how to behave like bureaucrats. We need more programs that teach us our rights in our language.
For him, no flag or port will replace the true meaning of sovereignty. That, he says, comes from communities being able to feed themselves, govern themselves, and keep intergenerational knowledge alive. Samuel Watt, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Yukon First Nations are calling on the territorial government to repeal amendments it made to mining regulations in May. The temporary amendments will extend some mining permits, allowing the government to help alleviate what it calls a significant backlog in permit and license renewals. But First Nations say they weren't consulted about the updates. One First Nation, Trondakwetchen, has even called it a betrayal. The Yukon government, though, says there was consultation. It just happened a long time ago.
This was about using the consultation that came from that past and just seeing that it had that ability to be used. So that's what got put in place. And the backlog is, like, you just started talking about Bill C5 and I was just with the mines ministers last week from across the country talking about that piece. And C5 is trying to fast track how things are going. What we're trying to do is to make sure that there's time for the systems that we've all agreed on here, YESAB and the Water Board, to have the time to do their work. Like they've really been, there's a lot of pressure on those groups.
Bill C-5 is the federal government's controversial legislation that allows for fast-track approval of major infrastructure projects. Today, Prime Minister Mark Carney held a pivotal summit with several First Nations leaders in Gatineau, Quebec about that bill. Leaders from the Yukon and NWT are taking part. Carney promised to listen to everyone's concerns, and as Olivia Stevanovich reports, it was a major test of Carney's ability to work with First Nations.
Please help me welcome the Prime Minister.
Facing a skeptical crowd, Prime Minister Mark Carney made his pitch.
This is the first federal legislation to put Indigenous economic growth at its core.
As he tried to earn the support of First Nations leaders for a new law that speeds up the approval of major projects.
We fully recognize there's many diverse perspectives, which is exactly why we've assembled this group.
Outside the summit, concerns laid out loud and clear.
I need you guys to just go back there, and then you can do whatever you want there.
Let us in.
As opponents tried to confront Carney.
You guys took our land and you stole it. Now you want to put mining sites where our last land is. Our land is the most untouched land in Canada.
I'm walking out. I mean, this whole thing has just been a complete disaster.
Back inside, some left the meeting early.
They want to do billion-dollar projects, sidestepping all type of regulations. They can't even get a two-day event done properly. Leaves a lot to question at the end of the day.
That's not a good start. I think there has to be a reset and there has to be a process set in place.
Others stayed, hoping for a resolution.
Prime Minister Carney has to dial it back, and he has to be able to say, okay, pushing a bill wasn't the greatest idea.
We were absolutely clear what we intended to do. Canadians backed that.
That acknowledgement didn't come, but Carney did promise to never override First Nations rights.
He took the time out to meet with all the chiefs. It's got to be it's a tough crowd.
And Carney's plan has First Nations supporters eager to pitch energy and infrastructure projects.
If we're able to expedite those economic initiatives to see them come to fruition in a timely manner, it'll benefit the economics of the nation. Then that alleviates the social problems like housing, education, health, and other areas.
Carney says he won't make any changes to the law, but that the summit is just the start of working with First Nations. Olivia Stevanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Dene National Chief George McKenzie is in Gatineau, Quebec tonight. He watched today's summit and we spoke earlier. National Chief McKenzie, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, you're welcome.
What's your initial reaction to how this summit went?
The summit was an interesting one. A lot of chiefs were in attendance online, and the Prime Minister spent the whole day with us. I think it's the first time any Prime Minister has ever done that. So in that sense, he's committed to working with the treaty people of Canada.
And do you think that there's anything about the summit that you might have changed, anything that you wish you learned, or any questions you wish you had asked or been able to?
Well, all the delegates are not opposed to development. So is the Dene Nation. We are not against development. So that is very clear at the summit. But the question is, what does this word national interest means? That word national interest makes us nervous. But the Prime Minister has assured us not to worry about the national interest, because any major projects, infrastructure, if it's going to be discussed, the Indigenous people, the treaty rights holders will be respected. They will be at the table. So that means the treaty rights will be respected. That's all good words that we hear for the ear. But now he has said he is committed to make sure the treaty rights is honored, treaty right to the land, environment protection, and that all goes with treaty rights. So that's all good words that we heard today.
Definitely good words. I mean, throughout the process of this Bill C-5, Prime Minister Carney has said he will respect treaty rights, respect the need for Indigenous consultation. That being said, there are still some Indigenous leaders that have really big concerns with this bill. Are there any concerns that you have for the Dene Nation, for the Northwest Territories with this bill?
Well, in the Northwest Territories, there are projects that are related to Arctic security, they call it. The two major highways, the McKenzie Highway, the highway to resources to the Arctic, and the hydro dam, and possibly enlarging the airports for security. All those are major projects. But we mentioned to the Prime Minister if those projects are going to go ahead, the treaty people, the treaty holders, the Dene Nation as a whole has to take an equity position, be the owners of those projects. We have learned our lesson through diamond mines. We were not the owner of the mine, but we were just more or less advisory board and the IBA agreement. That didn't go far enough. What that means is our people didn't get as many jobs as they should have, and there was some layoff, and some contractors took over. We had no say. But if you take an equity position, that means we are on a full board of the operation of the mine lake. So this project, we will be the full board, full partner equity position on the operations of the project. So that's what we mentioned to the Prime Minister. We are in favor of development, but you have to help us, the equity position.
And what was the Prime Minister's response when you said that you're pro-development, but you need equity in these projects? You need to be partners in them.
Yes, the Prime Minister has said it over and over. Any projects of its size, big or small, it will not go ahead without full partnership of the treaty Indigenous people, which is very promising. So that goes with equity, anything that's related to the project. So those are good terms to start a discussion with it.
National Chief, thank you, Masi, for being here with me today.
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak from Quebec here. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Kluani Adamak was also at the summit. She is Yukon Regional Chief for the Assembly of First Nations. She put out a statement on social media with her thoughts, calling the summit a positive step. She says in part, "I had the opportunity to speak directly with the Prime Minister and key ministers about the urgent need for real, measurable progress." While PM Carney spoke of promising intentions, the true measure of the federal government commitments to First Nations will be reflected in meaningful action, not just words. It's time for the federal government to move beyond rhetoric and take tangible, sustained action that respects our self-determination, honors our agreements, and ensures our full participation in decisions that affect our lands, peoples, and futures. That from Yukon Regional Chief for the Assembly of First Nations, Kluani Adamak. Cracked concrete, exposed steel bars, and soil under an abutment. These are the problems on the Alaska Highway Bridge the Yukon government plans to fix. Government officials held a public information session on Wednesday about the future repairs. The CBC's Marissa Mayer was there.
A temporary bridge and 2 underwater enclosures for workers to access this bridge near Johnson's Crossing will need to be built before repairs can start. Then, soil anchors will be installed at the feet of the damaged piers to stabilize them. The government says the bridge is still safe to drive on, and it says it is not concerned it will become unsafe in the near future.
Ultimately, everything will help make sure that the bridge is safe in the long term and that it continues to be stable so it can withstand natural events like flooding, earthquakes, and strong winds.
The government's bridge manager, Muhammad Idris, estimates the project will cost between $15 and $20 million. Goulet says it will work with the Teslin Tlingit Council and the Teslin community to seek local contractors. The government has met with Teslin Tlingit Council representatives who had concerns for Chinook salmon who swim by the bridge as part of their migration route. The government says its various stages of environmental assessment and applications will keep the fish safe.
We'll ensure like a fish exclusion zone is scanning for fish before some of the in-stream works occur. And as well, we're going to try and minimize the in-stream footprint from the project, from the piles, and keep that at a minimum so we don't impact fish and fish habitat.
Applications to the Yukon Environmental and Socioeconomic Assessment Board and to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans will be submitted by the end of this month. If approved, construction is set to begin in 2027 and continue through to 2028. The next public info session will be on July 28th from 4 to 6 p.m. Marissa Mayer, CBC News, Teslin.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.